Hey there. Hey there. I'm Sully, and as always, welcome to the Gun Club. All right, today's video is going to be a little bit of a change of pace from some of our normal stuff. I wanted to do this as a pre-recorded video and put it out, pretty much because I want to give a lot of thought to this and time to this and give it really the thought that it deserved and the time it deserved. I'm going to be going into a pretty serious topic today, and I want to address several things that were said in a recent debate. For those of y'all who don't know, there was recently a debate up at Dartmouth. It was hosted by them between David Hogg and Spike Cohen. Now, it was a gun control debate relating to 2A and a lot of things firearms related. And quite frankly, I watched it a few times over. If you're not familiar with who David Hogg is, David, I'm going to address a lot of this directly to you. David was a senior at Parkland, Florida, Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School, when they had a school shooting there back February of 2018. It was actually Valentine's Day. A 19-year-old former student of the school who had been removed from the school for a list of disciplinary issues, aggression and violence, came into the school with an AR-15 platform rifle and shot several students. It was one of the worst school shootings in history, quite frankly. By the end of the day, 17 people were deceased, 14 of those students, 3 staff. Another 17 were injured, several significantly, including 16 students and 1 staff member. Now, the local sheriff's office had received over 23 calls about this shooter within about the last year or so. Calls of the residents, everything else, calls from the school. He had posted comments on things online about wanting to be a new pro-school shooter. The FBI had even received tips on him about 45 days prior to the incident. This gentleman was troubled. There was no doubt there was trouble. He had been potentially looking at a site commitment back in, I believe, 2013 or so. He had a long history of violent, aggressive outbursts, definitely some behavioral and or mental health issues. And, well, he had purchased an AR-15 platform rifle about a year prior. That day, he took an Uber to the school, went in, and did a lot of bad things. A lot of lives were messed up that day. A lot of people were hurt. A lot of people were killed. Even the people who were not physically injured had to deal with it. And, David was a senior there at the time. And David, I say this with all the sincerity in the world, I'm sorry you had to deal with this. I'm sorry anyone in your class had to deal with this. There is no excuse, rationale, or reason that any school student, school child, whatever you want to call, should have to deal with this type of thing going on in their schools. And I am 100% on board with a lot of what you say as far as wanting to eliminate it. Now, when you were in the debate the other night, it was about 2 weeks ago, you said something several times, and I agree with you 100% on it, David. I'm going to say it. Now, for those of y'all who don't know who David is, he has been a bit of a lightning rod. He has been a bit of a punching bag sometime for the Pro 2A side of the world. On the other side, I'm going to give David a lot of grace here for some of his anti-gun beliefs and his anti-gun concepts. We're all products of what our lived experiences are, and David's lived experience, unfortunately, includes a horrifically tragic event. I mean, we've talked about what it is. Therefore, I don't necessarily fault David for his beliefs. I don't want to come down on him. I don't want to bully him or pick on him for it. I do, however, want to address some of the stuff that was said and just sort of look at the shooting in a little bit of a different light. Maybe, David, if you ever see this, you're welcome to reach out, talk to me. Honestly, I can understand why you feel the way you do. I appreciate the side you're coming from. On the other side of the coin, I want to sort of let you know where other people come from. And I want to let you know where I come from in this whole equation. Now, I've never lived through anything like that, and thank heaven I have not. Again, like I said, there's no reason anyone should have to. And I think that definitely we need to address those issues. And we'll talk about how we can address those issues the most effective way, at least in my humble opinion, for what it's worth, my 2 cents worth. Now, again, this gentleman had numerous calls to law enforcement, numerous, mental health issues, numerous behavioral issues. And David, in the debate, you said several times, there is no reason whatsoever why a 19-year-old who has repeatedly threatened to shoot up a school should be able to access an AR-15 weapon. You called it an assault rifle. We'll just call it an AR-15. David, I agree 100%. There is no reason that somebody with that type of history should be able to access any weapon, any firearm whatsoever. Quite frankly, I don't think he should be allowed to access a plastic stage knife. That being said, however, I think the laws are already in place. I know you're active trying to get more laws passed. And I think we're at that point of, do we need more laws or do we need better action taken by the authorities to deal with existing laws? And what I'm saying very simply is 23 calls, law enforcement involvement, FBI gets a call 40 days prior to the shooting. Apparently that slipped through the cracks on the tip line. There were multiple oopses and drop the balls prior to even the shooting happening by many law enforcement agencies. Now, I'm not trying to throw blame on the thin blue line. I'm not trying to come off as anti-cop. I am trying to come off and be very realistic. The sheriff's office, the FBI, I don't know if Florida DLE was involved, but any law enforcement agency that was notified about this young man dropped the ball by not getting him help and getting him, put somewhere or treated somewhere or somewhere to help him manage his life, which was spinning rapidly out of control. Unfortunately, their failure to do so allowed this to progress to the point that what happened. Now, I'm going to go another step further. On the day of the event, the school resource officer who was there on campus, he did not act properly, nor did his superior act properly, in my opinion. Very much since 1999, 2000, the standard of care and the standard response for law enforcement, active shooter, is first an officer goes to the scene of the shooter, go toward the sound of gunfire. If you look at the way many of these active shooters have been handled, that is the way they're handled. That is why we're seeing body count, so to speak, dropping dramatically. We know that the only thing that's going to stop the killing is somebody getting in and engaging with the shooter. Now, in this case, law enforcement, the SRO, was outside the building. He stayed outside the building, maintained a perimeter. Other responding officers took cover. If I recall correctly from the notes I read, the shooter was actually able to make it all the way up to the 3rd floor and then dropped his firearm and escaped in the massive run of students that was running out of the building and was picked up later. Also, if I recall correctly, it was a neighboring agency, Coral Gables, that made initial entry into the building. Okay. So there was another oops on the behalf of the sheriff's office. Again, not trying to throw rocks, trying to be honest. If I can't be honest on this stuff, what are we here for? Now, David, you made the point. No way a 19-year-old with that history should be able to get that weapon. Okay, forget the assault rifle stuff. Forget the large capacity magazine. It was standard capacity that comes with a weapon. There's no way a 19-year-old should be able to get any firearm when he's got the history that this young man did. Law enforcement And those in charge, whether it's Florida Mental Health, the psych facility, psych hospital, a lot of people dropped the ball in the weeks prior to this shooting. On the day of the shooting, again, a lot of people dropped the ball. Why was this young man able to continue shooting as long as he was? Because law enforcement failed to respond as aggressively as they could, should, would have. All of that being said, your thought and your proposal is that we need more gun laws, stricter gun laws, everything else. And I can understand, having lived through this fiasco, why you would say that. But David, this is where I'm going to call something out. And I'm going to call it out because, again, I'm being honest. I'm sorry you went through that. I'm sorry your sister and all your classmates went through that. I'm sorry for the people you lost. This is tragic. It's horrific. That day, that morning, that week, both the adults, the faculty, the students, everyone in there outsourced their safety to another agency, to law enforcement. On a day-to-day basis, if we go to a place where we cannot, where I personally, I'm pro 2A, I've got my permits. If I go someplace where I can't carry, let's say a hockey game, I can't carry, I am outsourcing my safety to the law enforcement or whoever the event security, venue security is. That day, because of laws about not being able to carry, teachers, faculty, staff, even if they had wanted to, they could not carry. They had to, and were forced to outsource their safety and security to that agency. Now, if we outsource our safety and security to some other agency, then we have no way to defend ourselves. And heaven forbid they drop the ball. I understand that a lot of teachers don't want anything to do with being armed. I get that. If a teacher doesn't want to be armed, no, they shouldn't be. But if a teacher is willing to train effectively, efficiently, pass whatever we come up with as far as a quality course, possibly more active shooter training than even law enforcement has, and he or she wants to carry, I support them doing so. And the reason is, I think it's wrong to force someone to outsource their security to someone who can drop the ball. I'm sure you have bodyguards, and I know you had mentioned the aftermath and some of the, things that were sent to your family afterwards. Again, disgusting, totally condemn it 110%. I think you should be allowed to speak your mind. I appreciate the fact I can speak my mind. I appreciate the fact you can speak your mind. I may not agree with what you say, but I'll stand for your right to say it any day. However, when we get into this, I would never tell you that I want you to give up your right to protect yourself. I would force you to outsource it to some third party who may or may not drop the ball. In the preceding weeks, the preceding months, and the moments before this, your security, you were forced, at least the teachers were forced. I mean, y'all's kids were too young to carry, but the teachers were forced to outsource it. What would have happened in that situation if there had been maybe one or two teachers in that building 12, or that 1200 building, who were able to engage the shooter? What would have happened if someone had, even that law enforcement officer who stood outside, again, condemn him totally, but if he had done his job, things would have been different. These numbers would have been different, likely. Unfortunately, he dropped the ball. I don't want anyone to have to outsource their security and their personal safety to someone else. Now, I'm very pro law enforcement. I get a lot of heat for it sometimes. I'm pro the good ones. I know and have worked with a lot of good ones. I spend a long time on the road in fire and EMS. I've worked side by side with some excellent officers, male, female, and all the combinations in between, quite frankly. But you know what? They can drop the ball. And at that moment that they drop the ball, or they're short-staffed, or they're busy, or they're having a bad day, or they screw up for any reason, I want the least chance to stand there and be able to do something more than say, no, please don't shoot me. There were people that day who showed incredible bravery. I read a lot of the stories of it. Imagine if that bravery could have been channeled to engaging with some of the attackers, or engaging with the attackers, so to speak, instead of just waiting for something bad to happen. David, I get your anti-gun, and it makes total sense. And I know you said you're not 100% anti-gun. You just want better laws, better restrictions. Okay. But any restriction, anything we do, any law we pass, it only affects the people who obey the law. Gun-free zones are one of the biggest targets in the world. We see it all the time. We hear from these shooters, I'm going to get so-and-so many and I'm going to be famous. They want to go to the path of least resistance. The disgusting top shooter up in Buffalo. Yes, he had a lot to say about a lot of different racial and ethnic groups, but he also said he wanted to go somewhere with weak gun laws, or gun laws that would keep people weak. Cucked gun laws, I believe, was the term he used in his manifesto, because he knew he wouldn't meet resistance. David, I'm sorry this happened to you. I hate that anyone goes through it. But every time we have one of these mass shooting events, we automatically go back and say the gun is the problem. You know what? This kid had bought that rifle a year earlier. All the waiting period laws wouldn't have worked, wouldn't have done anything. If it had been, not a rifle, if it had been handguns, look at Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech had a higher body count than Parkland did, and it was done with handguns. So, and you could probably smuggle handguns in more easily than you could a rifle. Just saying. So when we try to talk about gun laws, I understand where you come from, but think about it this way. When you disarm the citizens, you tell them that they've got to depend on something else, someone else. And if that person drops the ball, they're kind of up the creek without proverbial means of locomotion. Folks, let me know what you think about this. Let me know down in the comments section. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up. Again, this is definitely a change of pace from what we usually do. Share it out to your friends. Share it out to your anti-gun friends. Understand that every one of these mass shootings, you look at what happened in the mall in Indiana. A bystander with a handgun stopped a massacre with an AR-15. And that's not the only one. It happens more than you think. If you want to ask me a question, holler at me again. You can do it in the comments, or you can holler at me on X or Twitter over on Locals. We have our Locals group there. There's my email. Folks, I look forward to hearing from you, and thank you very much. Please be smart, be safe, have a good day. Bye.